My name is Victoria Larsson. I am going to be telling you today about wind and solar energy and how it impacts our global community. So wind and solar energy has been used for thousands of years before the industrial age. And when the industrial age started, we were mostly using wood burning. Obviously we haven't discovered photovoltaic cells yet. And at the time, it was decided that fossil fuels would be the best energy source in the industrial age. At the time, it was very prominent, and burning fossil fuels had explosive power. So it really gave a lot more power than just wood burning wood. This pie chart shows our nation's total energy supply in the year 2008. So as you can see here, renewable energy only takes up 7% of our total energy supply. Out of that 7%, solar only accounts for 1%, and wind only accounts for 7% out of that total 7%. So when you're looking at the total global energy, wind energy only accounts for 1% of the total, whereas solar power actually produces less than 1/10 of 1% of our global energy demand. Yet, every hour of the day, our sun gives the earth more energy, more than enough, for our global needs for an entire year. Now, don't get me wrong, of course the solar trend is growing. It's in fact grown 20% per year over the past 15, and Japan, Germany, and the United States are all major contributors to this solar cell market. Now, to avoid confusion, I'm going to explain a little bit on how photovoltaic cells work. They're made of semiconductor materials, and when photons from the sunlight hit these semiconductor materials, it knocks the electrons loose from their atoms. When the electrons are flowing through the cell, it generates electricity. It basically makes a photosensitive diode. So I'm going to show you a very short clip explaining visually what I just explained to you.
Solar cells convert sunlight directly into electricity. We start with sand, which is processed into highly purified silicon. In a process called doping, trace amounts of special impurities are added to this purified silicon. For example, when silicon is doped with boron, the resultant material is called p-type. When silicon is doped with phosphorus, the resultant material is called n-type. When pure silicon is doped with both boron and phosphorus in just the right way, a p-n junction is formed. This process establishes a permanent electric field in the crystal. When a p-n junction is made so that light can strike its top surface and metal conductors are attached to the p and n-type sides, a solar cell is formed. When sunlight strikes the solar cells, electrons are ejected from the atoms, and the permanent electric field in the junction steers them to the n-type side. If a wire is connecting both sides of the solar cell, electric current can flow whenever sunlight is striking the solar cell.
Now I want you to keep in mind that there are direct and indirect forms of solar energy. So what was just explained in the video is a direct form. Indirect would be such as heating your house. When the sun beats on the roof of your home, it will warm the interior, and then that heat stays trapped inside overnight. That's an indirect form. There are other passive forms, such as absorbent plates that can heat liquids, even forms such as making sun tea using the sun to brew tea. So there are a lot of methods of using the sun for our benefit for energy, besides just the photovoltaic cells that have become so popular. Solar energy offers a lot of advantages to what we're currently doing with fossil fuels. Solar energy is continuous, it's clean, and it's safe. It's a renewable form of energy. It's free after the initial setup costs, which are becoming cheaper and cheaper due to silicone based cells, and solar energy doesn't cause any pollution. It's accessible in remote locations, and after the initial setup, it's virtually maintenance free. Solar power can also be used to redress or remedy severe temperate and tropical zones. Unfortunately, it also comes with some disadvantages, of course. Solar energy is dependent on cloud cover, season, latitude, and time of day. It must be converted into other forms of energy for useful application. And the efficiency of photovoltaic cells is very low. It's between 10 and 20% currently. And obviously, of course, it doesn't work at night without a storage source such as a battery or a generator to hold that power that it's collected. So now that I've told you about solar energy, I'd like to introduce you to wind energy. If you remember from the pie chart at the beginning of my presentation, you'll remember that wind energy is actually used much, much more than solar energy at this point. Funny enough, wind energy is actually another form of solar energy, because wind is produced by the uneven heating of the Earth's atmosphere by the sun. It is also based on irregularities of our Earth's surface, as well as the Earth's rotation. So wind power is converting the wind's kinetic energy into mechanical power. The estimated average power available from shifting air masses on the globe is actually 1.8 quadrillion watts of power. So human beings have been using wind power for thousands of years. It was used for sailing ships, grinding grain, and pumping water. Windmills were used as early as 2000 BC, and they originated in China and Persia. Wind resources are characterized by their class of wind power density. Class 1 is the lowest density and 7 the highest. So you can see on this chart here, based on the wind power class, what that resource potential is. Wind needs to be at least 7 miles per hour to be usable, but 13 or more is ideal. So class 3 and above is considered a very good resource for wind power, and there are many of these locations in the United States. As of May of 2014, we have as many as 46,000 turbines in operation. Modern wind turbines are either a horizontal axis or vertical axis turbine. Each revolution of the turbine spins the rotor of a generator. In the generator, there are copper wires in which the rotation causes the electrons in this copper to flow. The result is electrical energy, which can then be harvested into a battery of some sort. This is a detailed model of a horizontal turbine and its components. So it has three main components, which the first is the blade or the rotor. Now, this converts energy of the wind into rotational shaft energy. So it uses that kinetic energy from the wind. The next is a drivetrain, which that includes the gearbox and the generator, as you can see in the picture. And then the third is a tower that supports the rotor and the drivetrain. Now, there's a lot more equipment involved. Those three are just the main components. Other equipment includes controls, electrical cables, ground support equipment, and interconnection equipment. There's a lot of machinery involved in wind turbines, and actually it's the machinery that accounts for 80% of the cost. So here you can see the two main types of turbines. On your left, those are vertical turbines. You can tell by their shape. And on the right, we have horizontal turbines, which are horizontal turbines are what is currently being used most for wind power. But recently, scientists have been finding some detrimental effects of these horizontal turbines specifically that aren't necessarily found in the vertical turbine wind farms. So there's a new term coined, wind turbine syndrome, which is a condition in which the subsonic noise generated by the turbines can cause maladies in people living nearby, such as headache and sleeplessness and depression. There's also an ecological risk. A wind farm in California had accidentally built in a migratory route for birds of prey, and unfortunately they're now responsible for 1,300 deaths of eagles, falcons, hawks, and other predatory species that were migrating through that wind farm. Now, and you can see by looking at the shape that the vertical turbine could do a lot less damage. It covers less of a span, and it actually produces as much, if not more energy, wind energy, than these horizontal turbines that we are currently using. So advances in wind power technology, and specifically turbine technology, has led to an increase of lifetime of our turbines, improved performance, and reduced cost. Although wind energy still accounts for only 1% of the world's energy generation. There are many advantages, of course, to wind energy. It's sustainable, it's clean, continuous, there's no thermal burden on our Earth. But that also comes with a lot of disadvantages. As I said before, there's the ecological risk, such as the example in California on their wind farm that was built too hastily and has now caused the death of many species of birds. And that's everywhere. It doesn't have to be in a migratory path to cause damage. Wind energy and turbines also have a low power density. The wind velocity must exceed 7 miles per hour to even be useful. And also there is variation in the power and duration of the wind, usually based on environment. There are also other environmental effects, local climate, and of course, as I also mentioned before, the wind turbine syndrome that I described that has recently come to light as a potentially major issue to wind turbines, wind power, and sustainability in that. Now that I've presented to you the current use of these energy sources, I want to show you the possibilities of their future. This year, the U.S. Energy Information Administration forecasted renewable energy to be the fastest growing power source through 2040. And investors are starting to see renewables as strong assets instead of risks. In addition, there are many renewable energy companies that are experiencing a boom with the renewable energy trend. Solar City Corp is one such company. They have increased their worth by 6 times in the past 3 years. So there are a lot of possibilities at this point as more and more we are supporting sustainable energy on a global scale. I found a few future technologies that are in the making as a result of this renewable energy trend. So one of the coolest examples I found is in Ethiopia. Construction has just begun this year for a tulip-shaped hybrid power plant. And this power plant works through indirect solar energy. So there are 50 mirrors which are synchronized to follow the sun's rays. And they direct light towards a lens in this tulip-shaped tower which absorbs the concentrated rays. The lens heats up to 1,000 degrees Celsius, and that causes pressurized air to turn into pressurized gas. Then that gas is used to fuel, to turn a turbine's blades to generate electricity. And I thought this was a really great example because it shows using solar energy to produce kinetic energy to then produce electricity. Also, these towers are not as damaging as large wind turbines because they don't have those large turbines trying to collect wind energy by itself. It just creates its own kinetic energy. NASA is looking to expand on our current wind power technologies to create airborne turbines that spin at high altitudes, up to 30,000 feet potentially. At higher altitudes, the wind is more predictable, and it's also more powerful. It has a much higher velocity. So airborne turbines could generate 8 to 27 times more power than those same turbines at ground level. These turbines would be tethered by nanotube cables so they could be brought in and collected. It is also noteworthy that they won't be taking up any ground space, which is becoming more and more precious, and they can even be installed offshore to avoid air traffic. Wind power isn't getting all the attention. There's a company that has created a spherical sun power generator prototype that has a dual-axis tracking system to follow the sun's rays. So it's fully rotational, and it's suitable for inclined surfaces such as the walls of buildings. And the prototype allows for twice the yield of conventional solar panels. So how it works is that the light hits the spherical lens, and then that light becomes concentrated onto a single point, which is then collected by the silicon solar cells. And those are also on a rotational device so they can follow where the highest concentration is. And it's interesting because this method of solar power collection, did not require any new technologies, just simple human ingenuity. And that's the best part of this renewable trend coupled with resource designs, is that human ingenuity is boundless. And as the desire for sustainable living grows, so will our grasp on it. For more information on alternative energy, I recommend that you access www.alternative-energy-news.info. This website has some remarkable articles about wind and solar power, as well as many other energy and environmental themes are discussed. Thank you.